This is the Coleman Steel Creek 6-person tent with screened porch and integrated Rainfly, and I wanted to talk about it because I've taken it on a couple of trips now, and it surprised me in some good ways and annoyed me in a few others. I've been looking for something I could set up fast after work on a Friday, with a bug-free hangout zone for coffee and gear, and this one kept popping up. After 2 weekends of real use, one hot and calm at a lakeside site, one blustery with on and off rain, I've got a pretty solid feel for how it actually lives. I'd put this tent squarely in the casual car camping category. It's a convenience-first, fair-weather-friendly shelter with a screened porch, not a storm bunker. You're paying for fast setup and a more livable footprint than a standard dome, and you're not buying an expedition tent. If you camp a few weekends a year with a small crew, want simple setup, and like the idea of a bug-free porch, it makes sense. If you obsess over ultralight weights or expect to ride out days of sideways rain, you're shopping a different aisle. The fast pitch frame is the real reason I chose it. Setup on my first try took me about 8 to 9 minutes solo, from bag to standing, including staking the corners so it wouldn't wander. On the second trip, with a little breeze and some drizzle, I got it up in about 7. The color cues and pre-attached pole system take most of the thinking out of the process. You spread it out, extend the legs until they click, attach the fly, and you're basically done. Staking and guying clean it up, especially the screen room, which gets saggy if you skip those front stakes. I've used a bunch of standard sleeve and pole domes over the years, and this is just less fiddly. After a long drive, when you're racing the light, that matters. The screen porch is the second big win. It's not a sealed room, and I'll talk about rain in a second, but as a bug-free lounge and mudroom, it's great. I stored boots there, set a small table and 2 chairs, and had a place to sip coffee without getting eaten alive. It also keeps grit and wet jackets out of the sleeping area. On a warm night, I cracked the inner door and let air move through the mesh, and it felt like I had twice the usable space without having to cram everything onto the cabin floor. I also really like the psychological shift between the porch and the sleeping zone. The porch feels open and active, and the main cabin feels protected and private. Inside the main cabin, the center height is just shy of standing tall for me, and I'm around average height. It's not a cabin tent with vertical walls, so you'll only be upright near the middle. 1 queen airbed fits with room to walk around and stash duffels. 2 queens technically fit, but it turns into wall-to-wall mattress. So I treat this as a comfortable 3-person tent or a 4-person weekend tent with tight gear management. Ventilation is excellent. With the fly on and the windows cracked under the little awnings, the cross breeze kept things dry and reduced that clammy tent feel. On a chilly night though, there's no insulation to speak of. You'll feel the outside temperature, so bring a proper bag and layers. I'd absolutely call it a true 3-season design, leaning spring to fall. Weather-wise, I had mixed results that line up with what a lot of people say. In straight, steady rain, the main cabin stayed dry, no mystery drips from seams, and the floor kept groundwater out. The fly coverage and those inverted seams do their job. When the wind picked up and rain started blowing sideways, the porch got wet. The fly doesn't come down far enough on the porch sides, so water can push right through the mesh, and if the ground is saturated, the porch floor gets damp. I treat the porch as outside during storms and stash anything important inside the main cabin or toss a small tarp over the porch area if I'm determined to use it in bad weather. In wind around 20-ish miles per hour, the tent flexed but didn't fold. I made sure to guy out the fly corners and used better stakes than the basic ones. Noise-wise, the porch fabric flaps and hums when it's gusty. Earplugs help if you're a light sleeper. Durability so far has been mostly solid, with one caveat. The fabric feels tough enough for car camping. The floor is that crinkly, confidence-inspiring tarp style, and the steel legs give the frame a planted feel. The weak spot is the small black plastic clips that secure fabric to poles. I haven't snapped one, but a couple showed stress whitening when I pulled too hard in cooler temps. I'm gentle with them now, and it's been fine. But they're the piece I'm watching. As a backup, I tossed a handful of small zip ties in my stake bag, just in case. Packing it down is where I grumble. Teardown is quick, but getting it back into the stock bag is a chore. It wants a perfect fold and roll with 0 extra air in the bundle. I roll it around the pole bag to keep the width tight, kneel on it to squeeze air, and it still feels like a wrestling match. After the second trip, I moved it to a slightly bigger duffel and saved myself some frustration. Compared to the older dome tent I used before, just a basic Coleman with sleeves, the Steel Creek is faster to pitch, more livable thanks to the porch, and better ventilated. My old dome had fewer stake points and felt a bit wobbly in wind, and it didn't give me a place to sit without bugs. On the flip side, the old-school Rainfly covered more of the body, so in heavy rain it sometimes felt simpler and more predictable. against the pricier 6-person options I've tried from brands like REI and Kelty. Those often have heavier-duty hardware and full-coverage flies that protect vestibules better. They are more confidence-inspiring in prolonged storms. They also take longer to set up and cost a chunk more. For how I camp, 2 to 3 nights, drive-in sites, watching the forecast, the Steel Creek earns its keep. If I were chasing mountain storms or shoulder season wind regularly, I'd go with a full fly design and accept slower setup. Value-wise, I think it's worth it for the right person. You're getting a tent that actually sets up fast, has a genuinely useful porch for living space, and keeps the sleeping cabin dry in normal rain. You're trading stormproofing on the porch and a little hardware robustness to get there. I'd pair it with better stakes, a small tarp for the porch when rain is likely, and a bigger storage bag if you hate tight packing. Used within its lane, it's a happy camping tent. If you've got questions about how it handles specific conditions or you want me to test a setup trick, drop a comment. If you found this helpful, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and tell me what tent you're running right now.